sort of go for the universal connection. Like, first of all, being empathetic and just compassionate. You know, I'd say I think they feel that.
When the walls are built that high and the fears are that intense, sometimes we need
Right.
Sometimes a hammer can break down a wall, and sometimes you need a stick of dynamite.
You don't have a problem with Judaism, you have a problem with the religion or the way it was presented to you.
Right, there is a lot of like the spiritual arrogance that exists. It's definitely a world that attracts.
It's a very tricky stuff. And it warns about it in a lot of places in the holy books. Very careful. If I can accomplish that, they feel that something that was stuck, there's some movement out of it. Do you hear what I'm saying? Then I feel like I've accomplished something.
Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side.
All right, I'm sitting here with, do you go by Rabbi?
No. When people say Rabbi Muchnik, I say, I have enough issues. Like, I'm an artist. It's fine. It's good.
Okay, I'm sitting here with the artist, Michoel Muchnik.
Yeah.
So I remember you from when I was a youngster. So it's cool to be sitting here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. Remember when you were a little kid? Amazing. I didn't know all the drama that was going on, but your family and it's really special to be here. I've been following your journey for years, and
that's cool. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear about that.
It's really an honor to be here, I have to tell you.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear at some point what you saw following the journey on the outside. But before we get to that, can you give us a little bit of your backstory, where you grew up, how you were raised?
Yeah, so I'm from Philadelphia, a nice suburb of Philadelphia. We belong to a conservative synagogue. That was my upbringing, like 3 days after school, Hebrew school, that kind of thing, which I actually liked. Like being with the Jewish kids. There's a lot of Jewish kids in our area, a lot. I had my share of whatever, like everybody has a share of something growing up. We moved there when I was 12. There was some trauma there with, you want to call it, we're at Eli Nash's podcast, so the word trauma has to come out sooner or later, right?
Don't box me in.
What?
Please.
Don't box you in. No, I got that. Whatever, it was like typical thing. Our bar mitzvah was like a bye-bye to anything.
When you said 12 years old, you moved there. You in Philadelphia? You moved to or from?
We were in another area.
Oh, I got you.
We moved up to a nicer suburb.
I got you.
We lived in a simpler area, not very many Jewish people lived there. But we also went to synagogue, all that kind of stuff. And whatever. Then just briefly, because then you can just zone in and whatever you want to talk about,
I'll do that.
or whatever comes out. But after bar mitzvah, like that, basically we checked out of anything to do except the 2 years. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, we go to synagogue. Okay, that's my Jewish thing. And then when I was about 16, lots of stuff was going on. That's when that was already in the 60s, and the hippie stuff started, and I just got right into that. I was part of the whole counterculture, and as an artist, it's like
You grew up with many siblings?
an older brother and a younger brother. All of a sudden, he passed. I was in the middle of two boys.
Younger brother passed recently.
Pardon me?
Your younger brother passed recently?
No, he was in his 40s, young.
I got you. Okay, a while ago.
Um,
Okay, so you grew up like that, somewhat connected to Judaism.
yeah, my parents we were very Jewish minded.
Got it.
I mean, it was like just not from really.
Was it something that did Judaism interest you from a young age?
Yeah, there were things I liked about it, especially when I was very young. I very much felt connected to most of my friends were all Jewish. It was like there was a lot of Jewish people in this suburb, and but from the religious part of it, it's more like you're taught certain things, but they didn't really keep it, so it's just whatever. And then when it came to the hippie time, I mean, it's just very cool, Ellie, because I'm sitting here, I'm 71 years old, right? And sometimes I just think about back to what I've actually, or our generation has lived through. It's just, it's really fascinating. And it's really just amazing to just think of what we've experienced. I mean, I remember when the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan show, and I was young then. Maybe I was, yeah, I was maybe 12, 13. And there was girls pulling their hair out, you know, when they were singing. Like, we never saw anything like that. It was
Pulling
like,
their hair out from excitement.
yeah, they just. I saw so many things that started different ball rolling, some for the good and some for not good, right? Like the liberalism out of check, really, but it started then, right? Also, the search for something more spiritual was really starting then.
So, do you remember what was before and what, when you say the hippie movement, what was going on before that, and then what switched?
We just did what we're supposed to do, more or less, you know. You go to school and you study, and you're going to go to college, and you're going to try to get good grades, and you have friends. And my friends were really more into sports. I really didn't go do that too much. I was more I did my art, stuff like that. I wasn't so good at sports, so that's probably why I got interested in my art. But
you got into art from a young age.
Yeah. About 12, 13. I did. But when I was 16, it really got very serious. Yeah. In high school, they actually had you could actually take every day. You could take a course in art if you were planning to go like to art school or something like that. It was more progressive there with certain things, and I did that. You know, as I'm telling these things, why not? I'll just to bring up certain things which later in my life became very significant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this one art teacher was very serious about actually teaching students who really were wanting to become art, you know, like real artists, right? It wasn't just a class for anybody, because everybody had to take a class in art, right? And people would start drawing and do whatever, were asked to do whatever. And the first time I saw it, she walked around, and someone, you could see he was like very happy about what he's doing. He's making this perfect picture, whatever. And she came up and she took her pen and she just made like right across the whole thing. Another one, she tore it up right in front of the person.
What was this motivated by?
No, it's when people were too, like, they were trying to make the perfect picture that she wanted them to go out of their comfort zone, and they weren't. They were just staying in their thing. And it was like, you know, I'm making a really beautiful thing, and they're all proud of themselves. And she went to it. She would be like, when it's, like my teacher's going to be proud of me, right? And she would come and tear it. And I learned so much from that. I really got that. And I realized it was that to become an artist and really to become really good at your creativity, you can't get too stuck in anything or formula or anything like that. And you have to go out of your comfort zone, and it becomes more about the process. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Right. So she sensed it was some sort of perfectionism, or maybe someone too in their head while they were working on the art.
They're never going to grow.
Right.
They've already decided what works, what's good.
So she wanted to shake things up. So it's kind of the artistic version of grabbing someone by the shoulders and shaking them.
Right, but it was very, very powerful. And I ended up, the school gave a scholarship, the high school gave a scholarship to one person who was in the arts. And I got that. It wasn't like any big, amazing amount of money, but it went toward a little bit towards I went to Rhode Island School of Design. But so by the time I got there, and I was right it was 1970, it really was still the 60s, you want to call it. And then, what do you call it? All borders were just taken down at that school. It was just, what you see many years later was already going on over there.
So share what you mean by that, because I'm not sure.
No, I'm talking about just the liberalism, all kinds of things, just whatever, sexuality, just all these different things that were just being, the whole thing.
So let me understand. So leading up to that point, it kind of felt like the American way was white picket fence, everyone a cookie cutter approach, and then suddenly everything
like
exploded.
JFK and his pretty wife, young, everything was perfect. I think really, in those times, people after the war, by the time I came around, I was born in 1952, but in the 50s, especially the beginning of the 60s, the very early 60s, it was like life, for your average person in the United States was very nice. I mean, it was very, everything was okay. That's how everybody thought about it, and the president and everything. Everybody watched the president and his pretty wife and all this kind of stuff. And young, I mean, it was like Camelot. They call it that. And then all of a sudden, like, he's assassinated. That was a lot of the things that started the ball rolling. I say the ball rolling, depending which way you want to explain that. But there was a lot of, that was traumatic for the country. It was really.
There was an idealism that was shattered.
Yes.
And you feel like that inspired the hippie movement.
I'm not so sure it was one thing, what other things, but I don't know. There's always different things, but that was a huge. I just remember that was a huge.
Do you feel like we're in middle of one now, or we're continuing something that started then? Meaning, did another one recently start, or we're in middle of the old one?
That's a really good question. There's no question that we're still affected by that. There's not even a question by that. I deal a lot with younger people in my community. It just happens. When I say younger, I'm talking about mostly from 1920 to up to 40, but younger.
Mostly from 20s to 40s?
Yeah, like I say younger.
Yeah.
A number of them mostly guys. But I don't know. They confide in me. It just happens. I don't know what it is. It's sort of written on my face. Yeah. I'm safe to talk to. I'm gonna keep it. They know maybe enough about where I came from, what it is. I don't know what it is. And I'm talking about. I'm pretty much a card carrying, from a religious Lubavitcher. I hate that word, religious, but they know that I'm able to hold stuff, and so I have all kinds of people on all kinds of journeys, and they just they
feel comfortable.
Now, where was I going with this?
I was asking if it's a continuation or if it's a new one.
Oh, right. Now, if you want to call it that, our community, and I feel like there was also like a little bit, for some people, a breakdown of idealism or whatever, and there is a crisis, or we don't call it that, or what did you call it? There is a.
It was like an idealism that was shattered.
A newer type of, if you want to call it, trying to deal with things.
Okay, so let's separate this a little bit. Within the American kind of society, saying there's something that started possibly many years ago that we're still dealing with, which I think, from a trauma perspective, which I was going to try to avoid in this conversation.
Yeah, I didn't.
I think they say the last 3 generations.
I got you. You're probably thinking, oh gosh, there's going to be a fresh of air. I'm sick of trauma. I'm going to have some artist come in. He's just going to talk about his paintings. Sorry.
No, I don't plan with where it goes. I get very. It's kind of the same, right? This is my art. So if I plan it too much, if I'm moving a direction a certain way, then, I'll have the professor come in and just tear up all the microphones. So I understand what you're saying in terms of that. I don't come with too much preparation to these I prepared my whole life
Right.
for
No,
this
that's
conversation.
I didn't come prepared either. It's like it's what I love about this podcast, your podcast especially, is it's just you feel from anyone who's coming on here that they don't have to prepare anything. They just come with who they are, and that's what's so amazing about it to me. But
Right. For me, thank you. For me, it's really it's an opportunity to have a conversation. And with these microphones and cameras, I know that you won't pick up your phone, and you know that I won't pick up my phone. So that's all it really is. I mean, you used to be able to have these conversations normally. Now we need microphones and cameras in order to put our phones away.
that's because, well, come on, between you and me, it's because really you want to share with others. You want to anything you can share with others. It's beautiful. It's kindness. You want to share with others so that other people can benefit from it. Isn't that
Sure, but there's two components to it. When I'm in the conversation, there's the conversation.
right?
And in every conversation, I say, there's always the possibility that a part of the conversation or all of the conversation doesn't get published for whatever reason. And there should be value in the conversation itself.
Right.
Meaning I'm not waiting for this to be published to get value from it. I'm looking to get value within
Right
the
now, where we're
conversation
at,
itself.
I feel value in it. It's nothing to do. I'm not even really paying attention much where it's go. And I'm very present with you, and we're right here now, and this is our conversation. I got it.
So you mentioned something about what's going on now with younger people in the community speaking to you, younger 20s, 30s, 40s, being comfortable speaking to you and noticing maybe a shift. And are you comparing it to what happened what happened with JFK, where certain idealism was shattered in American society, and maybe saying that within our community there's been a idealism that's been shattered?
I guess you could correlate it to some extent. I think so. I mean, most of the ones who speak, for instance, if someone comes and like, they're having, they don't, they're searching for spirituality. They're searching for connection to God, or they want to know that maybe they don't believe in God. Whatever it is, and then there's so many temptations that we didn't really have to deal with. Let's face it, the internet, all the things that you talked about many times in your podcast, like all these things, it's so intense. Like I actually try to put myself in their shoes, you know, and in some way I can relate. But I'm also much older, and they're coming up having all this plop down on them.
Understood.
So I sort of go for the universal connection. Like, first of all, being empathetic and just compassionate, you know. I think they feel that. And then giving them space to, like, whatever. And, but I think we were in the middle of answering another question.
Well, what I'd like to get back to is
the
maybe your story.
correlation.
No, maybe your story a little bit is
Yeah.
continue on that, and then we'll mix in some of these, because I think
Yeah, so
it'll certainly help me to understand your story better. So as you're
I
mixing
got it.
in
Okay,
things,
so it was actually while I was in art school, and you know, drugs, psychedelics, different things. I wasn't like all the time doing that. I have an amazing outlet with my art, and was doing a lot of that. Like that satisfied a lot of self-medication, whatever you want to call it. But and the creativity and all kinds of things. But I just felt a sort of decadence and something with all that and the freedom to go. I was in this art school. I basically could do anything I wanted there. It was really, they didn't even have any grades. I mean, and I was with all these intelligent, because you had to be actually intelligent to get into this school. Like most art schools, you just had to know how to draw a straight line. But in this school, you had to actually be smart. You had to have like good grades or get good SATs. So I'm with all these smart, creative people. So it was it was whatever it was, but all this stuff, I think just the whole thing became just, and through different things, I ended up, Actually, your mother's Sephardi, Moroccan.
Right.
So it was Meir Abasera who was actually Makar of me, to brought me close to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
He's the whistler, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And I got into macrobiotics while I was in art school to really clean myself out of the toxins of the drugs and the whole thing, and to just do what I thought would be like a natural high. And when I say that, you mean like whatever. So it was really the beginning of the whole health food movement. A lot of things about it were good, but it was still like sort of a Zen thing. So it was like connected to this. But at one point, Meir Abasser used to be a teacher of that. He was like a big
teacher of
macrobiotic, and
Okay.
and he
Can you
had
explain
like a
macrobiotics?
following. What?
Can you explain macrobiotics?
Well, it's like it has to do with eating health foods, but it's also like a sort of philosophy, yin yang, balancing, and and spiritual things. And there are a lot of you want to call it, a number of ex-hippies sort of got into that, and just as in all these movements, there's always many Jews involved in these things. It's just amazing. And it was really actually miraculous. We actually...
So maybe it's the intersection of food and spirituality. Would that explain it well?
Yeah, there's a spiritual component to it, and just...
I say macrobiotics would that explain it? The intersection of food and spirituality? Is that...
Yeah, but it was also was really eating very healthy foods, and that's where all the organic stuff started, and just that it affects you, and what you eat and all this kind of stuff.
So he was a teacher of that.
Yeah, and he would, but there's always
Near the
a
university.
spiritual
How did you...
component to it. There's spiritual,
Right.
I won't call him, it was like, he was like a guru. He was a Jewish guy. He wasn't a guru of it, but in that sense, but it was that people really looked up to him. So I was told about him, and I didn't know. But when I came to visit, he had become Shomer Shabbos. He became Baal Tshuva. He came from this. All the Habachatzeros come from the same family. The Baba Sali, they're all related, and they all come from that. The original, I think, Yitzchak Abasera, who's named the Abba Chassera, with a whole miracle story that happened there with the rug. Have you ever heard that story?
No.
No?
No,
Your mother's Moroccan, you never heard that story? That's so interesting to me.
Maybe she said it in Arabic and I didn't understand.
Yeah, the hummus you got, right?
Which?
I said, you didn't get the story, but hummus on the table you got for Shabbos. the Moroccan food, Moroccan fish, right?
We had gefilte fish with matbucha.
Yeah. Got it. We can tell it's not a long story. The story was that he was one of the most learned students in this yeshiva in Israel somewhere, and one student had to go travel on some boat to what was it then? Constantinople? I don't know, whatever the Istanbul, different places where there was, well-to-do Jews, and to collect money for the yeshiva.
Okay.
And the lottery came out, and he was picked. So he went down to the harbor to get onto this boat, and they said there's no more room.
This is Yitzhak Abu Chatzar.
Yeah, and there's no more room. But finally, they just started going, and he was carrying his carpet. I guess he took it for him so he'd have where to rest and what. And he just sat on his carpet, and the carpet floated on the water behind the boat. It was like this open miracle. I mean, it's been passed down for generations. And when they saw that, they let him on board. And then he collected his money, whatever. So they named him Abu Chatzera, which means the master of the carpet. That's how they got the name.
Oh, interesting.
It's very interesting.
And this is the Baba Sali?
That's...
Or an ancestor
Baba Sali
of Baba
was,
Sali?
a great-grandson or great-grandson.
I got it. Okay.
Okay.
Understood.
They were Kabbalists. They were, Yeah. So, but Meir's family, they're related somehow, maybe a great nephew, I don't know, whatever. But they left Morocco in I guess around the early 50s because of the 48. When all that stuff happened, they came to France, and a lot of those families, the children just got assimilated into French culture. They had things. I'm sure the parents kept shops and everything, but they basically left the Yiddishkeit, Judaism. I mean, on personal. it was really fascinating. Most of they were students in this college, and he ended up staying in this one area. And then and he started a publishing company, and he lectured, and they opened up like a health food restaurant. And then he saw the lack of Jewish knowledge in these American students. He was flabbergasted. He just couldn't believe it because he didn't realize how much was part of his DNA. And to the point where he actually...
Even though he wasn't religious.
No, at that point he wasn't religious.
But he just knew a lot about Judaism just from the way he was raised.
Right. And maybe he even pulled on some of the sayings, in his books and stuff like that with him. He would whatever. He did do that, I think. But that's the point. He realized that he sort of threw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
In the sense that...
No, that he actually was not religious, and then he decided again. I have to the audience. I don't like the term religious.
Either me.
What?
Either me.
And I feel it when people come to me, but they don't this, then they don't that, they don't this. I said, you don't have a problem with Judaism. You have a problem with the religion or the way it was presented to you, or how you saw. You know what I'm saying. Where was I back to? So no, so he's noticing these young people, like he couldn't believe and he started to appreciate where he came from, and he started keeping Shabbos, and he had all these followers, like maybe it was like 25, 30 more that used to come around, but they were actually living there, and some of them were non-Jewish, and actually for them, eventually they converted. According to Jewish law, they were so taken by him that if this was what he's doing, this must be good. But in any which case, so he, and I was 20 at the time. Oh, I stayed there. He asked me if I illustrated his book. Is it some Chinese healing book? I illustrated it, and I stayed there. And
so this was in your university days?
No, it's in Binghamton, New York. Binghamton. And I at the end of the school year, I actually left. I didn't go back. I went there and I became, observant. And then I...
Maybe observant's a better word than religious.
Yeah, let's go there. And then I, after 8 months, I illustrated his book. And I realized I'm young. Some of them are married couples. I needed to really study, and I got more serious about it. So that's how I ended up checking out a couple yeshivas. And then I ended up in Morristown. And I was in the first class of the Baal Tshuva part of the yeshiva.
Oh, cool.
There was only 12 guys there when I was there. 2 years later, I left. There was 70 guys. Huh. It was a big movement then.
So you made it.
I'm talking this is 1973 and 4.
Right. You made a connection which I didn't catch. So at the beginning of the hippie days, you had mentioned some psychedelic and drugs, and then detoxing from that through the macrobiotics. Can you link that together?
Well, that was like the macrobiotic thing. But
just how you got there. You had mentioned the psychedelic.
I just got there. Oh no! I had a friend who was macrobiotic, and she lived in Brookline, Massachusetts, and that's where the big center of the macrobiotic movement was. Actually, it was really started there. It was very big. So I would go sometimes there, and then I was just doing it. And then I didn't get pulled into the hierarchy over there like I thought. Oh, in fact, I'm going to share this with you. This one guy, he was like, I don't know, Asian, and so everyone looked up and was like, he really is like the knowing of all this stuff, all this spiritual stuff. Like he was, I went to one of his lectures. A lot of young people there, and he was talking about stuff, and there was a number of Jews, but it was one guy, obviously Jewish, because he said, what do you think about Jewish ritual? So he just waved his hand and said, oh, it's all sentimental. Sentimental in macrobiotic language is it's just like...
extra unnecessary.
It's really like... And I'm sitting
meaningless.
There, and I wasn't observing or anything. But it just... my neshama, my soul, I was so turned off. I just, that's it. I have nothing to do with this guy. That's it. Da, 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 da. But I was into the macrobiotic thing. But this guy, this is, he was like the big leader there. So a friend of mine, so she said, she knew because either she went with me there or I don't know, whatever the whole thing, but she said, go, try Mayor Abacera. Michelle, at the time, Michel Abacera, he's Jewish and, it's different take. And then I came there and there it was. I came in, it was the 7th day of Pesach, which is the holiday of, and they just come up for their meal and a bunch of them are wearing black hats and, and tzitzis, and I was like,
you're not giving the Chinese guy enough credit. You should say he's the one who's Makar of you.
Oh, you want to go there?
No,
yes, no, you're in a way.
No, you said that Meir Becerra was the one who brought you closer to Judaism.
But really, he got me in touch with my Jewish soul.
Exactly.
Yes.
It sounds like the Chinese guy did.
Interesting. No, that's how, how life works. You have to, where the messages come from.
Right.
You have to,
Okay, so then you become closer to Judaism. You join Morristown.
And then I had an interview. We called it Yechidus, but with the Rebbe in those days, you were a student in yeshiva, so you could have a private interview with the Rebbe near your birthday when he was doing those. So anybody had birthdays around that time, and he was having that those audiences. I mean, I was totally freaked out. I'm going to go in because by then already it was a year in yeshiva or so that I'm going to go into the room alone. It was pretty intense.
One-on-one.
But I did it.
What was that like?
Oh, well, if I say it was amazing, there were amazing things about it. Beyond amazing, it's just I didn't realize it until later in my life. And it wasn't all lollipop stuff. Like, I sort of sensed that there's going to be challenges in my life. I looking back, the Rebbe was taking, I don't know, it's beyond my comprehension, but sort of looked ahead.
So what was that like? You prepare weeks in advance, or you get notified just before that you're going in?
How much can you prepare? You just try to do your best, and
Are you notified well before?
Yes.
Several weeks, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In fact, they canceled us out and then made it later, so that because they felt we weren't really ready, so to speak, or we wouldn't appreciate that much.
Got it.
Looking back, I think that was ridiculous. But I mean, we're like starving souls, we came out of the thing, and now we're there.
So your group of 12 guys.
No, there was his birthday. And there's more guys there at that point, but there was 8 guys that during whenever that month or 6 weeks had birthdays. So we were the first ones from the yeshiva to go, but each one individually.
I got you. And how long does the meeting last?
Night. What?
How long does the meeting last?
Oh, each person was different. My first one was about 8 minutes, which was long. I mean, the secretary kept coming to pull me out. They didn't want to. They didn't take up the Rebbe's time that way, but the Rebbe was speaking to me, and I'm not going to walk out, obviously.
Spoke in English, Yiddish?
Yes, I understood everything the Rebbe said quite clearly. I never heard there was a language barrier inside the Rebbe's room. Amazing, but there was never a language barrier with anyone.
So earlier when we did a mini workshop, which we'll talk about later, you asked me to use a couple adjectives to describe different periods of the
meditation or the experience.
Yeah, the experience. So what are a couple adjectives you would use to describe that experience of meeting one-on-one with the Rebbe?
I was very guarded. I was very scared. I was going to have like a bad thought. I mean, a lot of it's from where I was coming. You don't. I'll tell you the truth. When I first walked in, I literally, I felt. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like it was just like the most.
Were you walking into his study room?
Yeah.
You're standing. He's sitting.
Like a Gan Eden. I feel like it was almost like I could smell it. It was just so. It was not just pure. It was like I don't even know how to explain it. Homey. It was just so beautiful and comfortable, right? And then the Rebbe told me to come closer, which I did. And I brought in a few little samples of my art. One picture and 2 pieces of calligraphy. Because I basically, at that point, it was like the Rebbe was going to give you direction. And even though I'm an artist, like I thought, whatever, but now that I'm like in this thing, like what does the Rebbe think I should be doing? So I brought my art in to show that I have this talent, but I asked maybe, if I'm observant now and I'm a Lubavitcher Chassid, maybe I should become a scribe, a sofer. The Rebbe said, the Rebbe answered that I should ask a sofer, which I did the next day. But in the same Yechidus, the Rebbe told me I should print kesubas, and I asked. I got excited. Somehow it was like the Rebbe was giving me a very big green light about going with my art, and somehow I felt that, and I got very excited. I said, "Oh, you mean I can do children's books, like things like that?" I went in there like the Rebbe was going to guide me. It was how I took what's supposed to happen, right? And the Rebbe said yes, and I started clapping and saying, Baruch Hashem a few times. And these things panned out, amazing. But the Rebbe said other things that were just like scary. The Rebbe said he was, and the Rebbe didn't look at me until only once. And there was very much concentrating at things. At one point, the Rebbe like went off to the side and was in very deep thought. And the Rebbe said something like, they'll take advantage of you. As my life panned out, there were times when that was happening. And I picked,
Who was they? Who's he referring to?
Individuals or this, and managers. It's whatever. It's beautiful. It was really actually mourning. And then the Rebbe said I should find a manager who I trust. Now, at that time, manager, I'm drawing a few pictures. I don't know what I'm even going to, you know what I'm saying? The Rebbe was empowering or looking to the future already. It was, the Rebbe was expected, he actually empowered people. He saw much more of our abilities than we saw ourselves.
So much more?
Of our abilities, of what...
Right. What do you feel like he was telling you with that statement of they're going to take advantage of you?
I had no idea.
In hindsight,
I had no
now?
idea. But immediately I tried to find somewhere. I was still in yeshiva, and the Rebbe even told me I shouldn't I asked, can I do artwork while I'm in yeshiva? And the Rebbe said not to interrupt with the schedule of the study. So I did very little, because you're studying all the time.
Right. In hindsight, you don't know what he meant by that, looking back at it now?
You mean in hindsight? Now,
when you look back at what he was...
yeah. I mean, it's not unusual for artists to be taking advantage in their business
No,
or
but
this or that.
he mentioned, you said he went deep in thought, and he comes back with something profound. What was that message? What was a message, a warning, a lesson?
I think the Rebbe was foreseeing that there was going to be a lot of challenges in my life in general and different things, and not just in business, other things, personal, all kinds of stuff. And I think there was trying to set it up that I would be able to get through it in one piece, tell you the truth.
Yeah. Did it help?
Yes. Still feel like I know one way I feel like I didn't expand enough. I didn't take advantage of all these things enough, but that's an okay feeling to have, I still want to do more.
Right. Walk me through the process when you decided to go to Morristown and become more religious. Is that a one day to the next when people, when someone takes that on? Is one day you're living one way and the next day there's Shabbos, kosher?
There's also a very big difference today with this generation and those days, like the hippie crowd, if you want to call it, or that we already changed our lifestyle drastically. We dropped out, turned into, I mean, you really dropped out of the regular society. Okay, we had a good number of
if you
people
bought
to
into
do
the
it
hippie
with.
culture.
What?
If you bought into the hippie culture, you dropped out of
it. It was pretty drastic change, right?
What was it? Tune in, drop out? What was the...
Yeah, drop out, turn on, tune in or something like that,
Right.
or tune in, whatever that's
Like Timothy Leary's thing, right?
something. Yeah, that stuff.
So I didn't understand that before, but so you became part of that movement.
Right.
Got it. Psychedelics and all?
Yeah, but I have a very, very active, creative mind. It was actually a way, like, I didn't always. Most of my experience with that was just too intense. It was just too intense, like, bad trip type things.
Right.
Not terrible, but on the other hand, there was expansive things. But I have to be honest with you, like, what's going on now with all this stuff, like, we come from a very different place. And I thought you would find this really interesting, part of this discussion, because our experience with psychedelics at the time was, I think, very different than what may be being experienced right now, or what people are trying to find through it. I don't, and but I'll never forget feeling like, at the time when I just stopped doing any drugs, it was like, what's the point of getting all high and all in this consciousness if I can't come down and live it in this world? This is where we are. I just felt it was a disconnect. Some people didn't come down, and some people, like, at those times, it was
Was it mostly LSD?
What I know, I mean, I did whatever. I didn't do much of all the things, but all of it. A little LSD, a little psilocybin,
Right.
a little marijuana. It was just, but in those days it was all illegal, and that was part of the fun. But, and I can't say that didn't have some experience, but I really, it was more because of it. My thing was, I got to find spirituality in a regular, like we call it, when I want to call it, a regular life. And I've had that challenge ever since. Artists and just creative, it's just not easy to balance that. Not easy for anybody, but.
What was motivating the psychedelic usage back then? Do you feel like it's different than what's going on now?
It's hard to say. I can't speak for anybody else.
No, just your
but
perspective.
We were really just. I don't know. Sometimes I think that what collectively the Jewish nation was at that time, because I think it's all somehow revolves around the Jews. That the assimilation rate, after the Holocaust, the whole collective understanding of Judaism and Torah, or any aspect of more mystical parts, people just didn't. They were so disconnected to it, and I think in some. I don't know. Sometimes I just think God, like, picked a bunch of neshamas and just threw them down to this thing, who would just not accept this somehow. We didn't accept, like, just life the way it was, or life being a Jew that way, or anything, and we just couldn't sit still. Just could not sit still. And when you're so stuck in that, and there's really no one to go to, and you don't even know who to go to, and you don't know, then that's why a lot of these Jewish, they just were, like, searching for, spirituality, or you want to call it finding God. But definitely a higher, something. They were just, what is all this about? Why?
Right.
And so, being that most of us did not experience this particularly, spiritual, or things from the Judaism we were brought up with, whatever level that was. So then you would search with other religions or other, theologies or things like that. So that was just going on. And some people, they thought they found it. We have one friend, he said, the 60s was like the light at the end of the tunnel for us. He says, but the only problem is we didn't realize it was a train coming in our direction. Backfired, because it was either it was in the wrong. But, and for many people, they also had to settle down. So they just, I mean, they had a good time. Who knows? There was a lot of people just partied through all that stuff. That wasn't my experience, and wasn't a lot of experience with a lot of Jewish people. And certainly the ones who ended up becoming observant, the way I see it, were really, really wanted to get to, like, you know, pacify their neshama. So then there's still, so when, here I am now looking at, so when we got off of that stuff, where we just like we sort of put that all in one, what's the word? A package of like, well, whatever happened there that we got to here, but that was all like not where it's at. Do you hear what I'm saying?
And you felt like when you found Judaism, it was where it's at. That was the feeling.
Oh, it's not even a question. Now, when I first came around, it was like, to me, anyone who was wearing a beard, you know, and was like righteous, because they're doing what Jews are supposed to do, like, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
And then, you know, somebody cheats you in business that has a beard, you know, something like happens, and then you start to have to really put two and two together, right? But that people are people, and people have their things and everything like that. Not everybody, just because they're wearing the garb, is doing everything. So But that's
Right.
just.
I mean, you don't have to sell me on this.
What?
You don't have to sell me
I
on
know
this.
I don't have to. Yeah, and you have many podcasts. You could people deal with
I know
that.
that.
You see, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, thank God for the Rebbe, because it started then. We were all really, I guess, judging people like we were really. If someone was not, it's something, you know, that's it. You know, Al, I want the truth. You know. And when it came to the Rebbe, everybody could stop, because there was a real side. Like, there was a real person who really cared, and there was really, you know, and that's what's, and that worked. But
And then the transition from, you know, being in Morristown in a, I guess, study environment, then transitioning to a religious community, an observing community,
right,
like Crown Heights. What was that like?
difficult. Wasn't easy to be there either. You have to admit, you take a bunch of hippies who basically could do anything that I was an artist. I could do anything I wanted. I was like totally, you know, free. Like, there never hadn't existed. I don't know if any society was like that. Every society was basically you kept to certain things, like society norms, right? And now all of a sudden you're in yeshiva. And every moment of every day, basically, you're supposed to be doing something like this, not like that, right?
Even just a rule for every moment,
right? So you would think, and some people couldn't handle it, actually. But the only way to really handle it, the only way to really actually integrate, was that you had to see the soul of the thing. You had to see the goodness of it, and you had to go and we did. Many of us did, and it was, to this day, it's something we're just, no one's. It's many. Have been some that like left it, but if you go back, there's usually stuff that they didn't integrate it in that way. You know what I mean?
Do you remember what it was that pulled you into it?
Well, it's so interesting because, you know,
not the original attraction, but which really cemented in meaning. I think I understand from what you're saying how you kind of ended up from Mayor Becerra into Morristown, but eventually to say, hey, this is how I want to live my life, raise my kids.
I don't think it was one thing. It was many. It was just studying, and you're try to integrating everything. What it is, it's you're being taught. Could be a particular Torah wisdom. It could be a particular teacher who, like, you know, showed some caring and is really there for you. I was just thinking something about what was the last thing you asked?
I asked about you know, if there was a specific not a moment, but something that really drew you in.
Oh yes. So when I first came to Morristown, the rabbi who was, and at that time no one wanted to take on the Bali Tshuva. They were just a bunch of long-haired hippies, basically, to them. In fact, the mainstream yeshiva in the same building, the parents like called the Rebbe. They wrote to the Rebbe. They said, "How can you let these people, and be near my kids?" The Rebbe had the vision and foresaw, and he even spoke about it that they want to return to their roots. It was a big thing in those days, and whatever. But at the beginning, we couldn't eat at the same table. When we first came, we were segregated. You know about that?
No, I know.
It didn't last very long because pretty quickly started doing it, and they see we're like more into it than some of their own kids.
Right.
But this rabbi that was there who actually took upon himself to take us on. It's almost like that art teacher who tore up he didn't go with an easy, though there was warmth, there was a lot of warmth and love. You felt that, but he was just, a lot of us came in with very, very big egos. Because in the world, that's not was about getting rid of your ego very much. In the contrary, it was about building up your ego. I'm talking about in an unhealthy way, right? I went to this school. I was the smartest this. I'm the smartest that. And I'm even the most spiritual hippie. And I even had the higher trip. And I'm saying, like, somebody asked me, well, what was the difference between then and now? Like when you started to, when was the first time you had a concept of Mashiach? The whole thing with the Aquarian age was all. I said, no, I had this back in the 60s. I said, the only difference is I thought I was Mashiach.
Right. There is a lot of like the spiritual arrogance that exists. It's definitely a world that attracts.
It's a very tricky stuff, and it warns about it in a lot of places in the holy books. Be very careful.
Right. I think I came across somewhere where it said that's one of the reasons not to learn Kabbalah before a certain age is because it could be misunderstood in many ways,
right?
And I think used in some of that way. I think there were two parts. One was about misunderstanding God because it's giving some what sounds like definition to it, and I think the other component was just getting lost in the.
Well, I hear these things people say.
In the
I had this psychedelic experience, and I saw God, and I mean, you've heard these type of things, but. I don't know, it's interesting. Now looking all back on the whole thing, I think if I could just give like a sort of a message over like how it's being number one at the top is being grateful, not for what you don't have, but for what you have, and like clean thinking. Clean eating, if you want to call it that, like wholesome, like a wholesome lifestyle. And like me, I'm card carrying because all the challenges and all things, different things I've had to go through, whatever. Like everybody's had different things, but it's there's a God, and I'll pray to Him, and you learn to see His presence in all kinds of things. I can share this on the podcast because you spoke about it actually with somebody in one of the podcasts.
Yeah, speak comfortably. If we ever need to cut something out,
what?
We could. Speak comfortably. Don't worry.
No, I don't think this is a problem at all.
I'm saying even if it is, we can always cut something out.
Like just this coming to your thing. I actually didn't really have any big doubts about it, but you could see why sometimes it could play into, is this what I'm supposed to be doing or whatever, or be controversial,
Coming
whatever, to your podcast.
Oh, this one, is it controversial?
What? No, I'm saying. All right, forget.
No, make your point. Make your point.
The point was
I'm listening,
that
I'm not saying anything.
I really didn't have much, but I said, so I thought, I did. I asked a blessing, at the oil, whatever, Lubavitch Rebbe, that I should be doing the right thing, whatever it was. But at one point, I just said, just when I was called by Yossi, do I want to be on it? And I said, yeah, I was excited. Then I thought, like, I'm looking for a sign from the Rebbe, like something.
Yeah.
Mom, it's like 2 minutes later. I decided anyway to sit down and watch one of your podcasts because I haven't watched so many, but now I'm going on. I started watching a whole bunch of them, the more recent ones, right? So, and what were you talking about? You were explaining to someone about Igros, about looking into the, and seeing an answer. You know how to.
Was that a conversation with Schneider Hickson? I think.
Yes, that's who it was with, and.
He was explaining to
right, and then you then said, and sometimes people find answers without. This is so. I'm looking at your listen. Just picture this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking I want an answer, and the first thing I do is I go on. Not that I was looking for an answer. I just went in to check out your podcast, and you're talking about this exact thing, getting an answer. You understand?
Yeah, that's nifty. Yes.
So what nifty?
I said
right?
it's nifty. Yeah.
Very nifty.
Yeah.
So I went, okay, done deal. Yeah, that's it. I'd already agreed to
Controversy
come on.
settled. Right?
What?
Controversy settled.
Right. But getting back to this, like the psychedelic thing, just because a lot of these young people that are doing it, or whatever, people ask me about it because they think I'm like, and I'm really not. I feel like I'm not really I just don't really can discuss it at this stage, I think if there's other paths without doing that, it's almost like, at the beginning of Tanya, it says, the whole, I don't know what you want to call it, the introduction to Tanya. So it says that there's a long way that's short and a short way that's
right.
long. And the Chabad way, or the Tanya way, is really that it takes work, it takes time. There's no short way. Short way eventually doesn't really get you there. Again, I don't want to come off like I'm really making these things because I feel like it's a different generation, different things going on. But that's my doubt about it in a certain sense. Like the long way that's short will, to me, is always work. I'm talking about like being kind, doing kindness, doing things, having a healthy lifestyle, praying to God, keeping the things, and just doing, keeping like that sort of thing, dealing with the challenges, but dealing with them from that perspective, and good sayings of the sages and stuff like that. To me, that's.
So based on what you experienced in the 60s, 70s,
I'm giving you from
around
my
psychedelics, right? Your
Yeah.
perspective. So you have a lot of skepticism around what's going on now with the psychedelic renaissance, which is okay. It's not.
Yeah, no, I know. I've listened to you talk to you. It's like that's what I like about you a lot. It's not like you have any big agenda over here. See, it's very hard for me because I had that experience, and I don't know what of that maybe. But again, most of it was not finding it there. It was mostly, if I did, it was about finding it here. You hear
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that
What?
there are a couple different things. Is number one, I can't speak for what happened in the 60s and 70s, but when I speak to people like yourself and others, it seems like a lot of the Renaissance was motivated by a search for meaning,
Right.
which I understand.
Right.
I think that now it's a little bit different. I think most people I speak to, myself when I got into it, it was really just a solution for suffering. Most
I hear
people who
what
went
you're
into it
saying. I hear what you're
suffered too
saying.
much and said,
yeah.
there's got to be a different way.
If they're just like nothing's working, therapies aren't working, this isn't working, then it's like basically it's how we felt also. So we
Right.
wanted to get out of that rut of a spiritual.
So you're saying
rut.
it could be the same thing?
In a way, I guess that's very interesting. That's very interesting to hear that.
I say for myself, I wasn't afraid of the work, right? I went to 12-step meetings. I don't know how many, hundreds and hundreds of 12-step meetings. I went to therapy for years. I
Right.
started from 2008 till 2019.
Right.
I did healing without any psychedelics.
Right.
And I used some breath work. I mean, everything I can find.
Right. Got
Someone
it.
was crushing up crystals and giving it to me. I was taking it.
Right. Try anything.
I'll try anything. I wanted a relief from the suffering. And what motivated me towards psychedelics was that despite the fact that I was sober, technically, my actions were sober at the time, and I healed a lot of things. I didn't feel like the effects of the child sex abuse were plaguing my life too much. There were a lot of things that were better, but I just lived with constant anxiety, and it just didn't feel right. I had periods where they got better, but it was constant. It was pretty much a constant state of anxiety. And the periods which got better didn't make it better. It only made me realize how much the anxiety was affecting
Part of your
me.
life. Yeah.
If you're carrying a bag,
By the way, I can
always
resonate with this.
And the reason I also asked about the which one is, I've never done LSD, so I can't speak to it. I just know people who do use it. I always hear about it more in a recreational / spiritual seeking way, not so much in a therapeutic. Personally, when I speak about the medicine, I'm really talking about ayahuasca, which from my own experience with different medicines, I kind of put in its own category, as I find it very, very grounding. I'm much more likely to get an understanding around how I should behave as a father, husband, business person than I will about, different dimensions in reality. Psilocybin, I find, has a very spiritual component to it, and I'm not as drawn to it because of that. I find ayahuasca very, very, very practical, even though there are visions and spiritual aspects of it. But I think it's on us, people like myself and others who are talking about it, to prove that this time is different. That's all. It's not a guarantee. These things aren't good. They're tools, and they're power tools, and they can definitely go the wrong way.
Very differently.
And the potential for misuse is high, and the risks are high. There's no question about it. I just see so much suffering, and I've seen a lot of people get tremendous relief from the suffering.
Well,
it gives way out, but it's not without work. I don't agree with it being a shortcut, because there's work during it. Number one, it's a very, very, very intense 6 hours. I mean, it's short to go into an ice bath for 3 minutes. It's only 3 minutes, but if it's 40 degrees, it's a long 3 minutes.
Right.
And an ayahuasca ceremony is only 6 hours, but it can feel like 6 years if it wants it to. So I don't. And also, there's the work afterwards. The work afterwards has to be put in order to.
You're talking about integrating it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. But I've seen for a lot of people who were stuck that this gave them a way out, whether it was, some very serious things and some things which on the outside maybe weren't as serious, but people who are struggling with suicidal ideation, marriage issues, relationships families which are about to be broken apart, divorce, and that changes. And then some more relatively, could be mild things, is, hey, I'm scaring the shit out of my kid, and recognizing that in a ceremony, and maybe avoiding something very serious for their child.
You said and I know that you've done like serious breath work. I've done some of that too, and I even incorporate some of these in my art meditation workshops. And I've gone to weekends where it's like these healing retreats, trauma release, and these type of things. I think just everybody's like, I've seen people with. Some people just these things are so powerful for them. I've seen some major changes in their life.
I'm a huge proponent.
Some people it's. In other words, I think it's. I'm just saying it. I've seen it also without the usage of these things, but that's
for sure
just what I've seen.
Yeah, no, it's not everyone needs it. Absolutely not. Right. Of course not. I speak to people all the time, and I'm like, wow, you got here without, you got to this level of understanding and broadness of mind without psychedelic use. I'm impressed, right? For me, I definitely needed some power tools in order to break down some of the walls that were built up.
There is a lot of suffering. There's a lot of suffering.
A lot of
people
suffering.
Really stuck, and it's actually overwhelming to me. It's so distressing when I see it, especially when I see it from young people in my own community. It's very distressing. And actually, because of that, and because I dealt with some of this breath work and different things, I actually started to, as I was doing with you, but it goes deeper when it's like one-on-one. But where where I found methods using techniques with the art, like where you can just go in and actually it's healing things, certain things. It's just like, I don't know what you call it. I call it somatic art.
Yeah.
But but to all these things, like
No, and I would say sure. Meaning, if someone's getting relief from those things,
right.
God bless. I could tell you my own experience with breath work, and I have pre and post psychedelic experience with breath work. And a lot of pre-experience, because I actually had a coach who I've had him on the podcast and I've spoken about a few times. His name was Mike Rosenfeld, and he and I worked together for a couple of years, and he's breathwork trained, and pretty much every time we met, we did some breath work. It was only even if it was only 5 or 10 minutes, and then at many times taking me through deeper experiences. And it helped me a lot, tremendously.
Well, breath work can be absolutely amazing.
However, I would say my breathwork experience post psychedelics have been completely different than my ones before. I felt like
you allowed yourself to go to certain
exactly
places.
There were places that I didn't know were attainable within me, and often as they're coming up, as someone is getting to those spaces, all of the fears in one's life comes rushing in, and it was only under psychedelics that I was essentially trapped to deal with those fears.
I hear what you're
and
saying.
Once I was able to break down that wall, then now I don't feel an intense need for psychedelics. No, I don't. And you had mentioned offline my conversation with Mayor Collinson that happened right after a breathwork ceremony with him. It felt to me very, very similar. It was shorter with less side effects. So I understand that. I understand that people can access that. But then you have many who simply cannot. And I don't think I was in a place that I could have. And it wasn't for lack of work. It's just when the walls are built that high and the fears are that intense, sometimes we need sometimes a hammer can break down a wall, and sometimes you need a stick of dynamite.
No, I hear you. What I found, which is really actually, it's just interesting how I end up into this place, but like what I feel I can accomplish. I'm not like a full-time whatever. Any of these things are just helping people through these things. It's not like that. A lot of people, they're so stuck. They haven't even entered sort of the zone of like, now more and more because everybody's talking about it, but this was not years ago. This wasn't, breath work or any of these things, meditations, like all of a sudden people are hearing that and they haven't gone there before. So anyway, but in any case, what I do with my workshops or something, it's more like a backdoor way of where a lot of times it's people who have not had experience of just going into a certain place where they're I just want to, if I can accomplish that, they feel that something that was stuck, there's some movement out of it. Do you hear what I'm saying? Then I feel like I've accomplished something.
Yes, let's talk.
Because once that nut is cracked, it just leaves space for
a lot to happen.
For a lot to happen.
Yeah.
Like I had one guy come to me and I call it little carpet work, and there was childhood traumas. He'd gone to, what do you call it? Therapist, talk therapy for 2 years, and he actually it happened because he was telling me it's just he's tired, not doing. So I said, like, I do a little some of this stuff. You want, we can try it out. Anyway, I didn't hear from him, and I don't do these things. It's usually more of like a 1 or 2 type thing, and get them like the ball rolling. And he called me up, I called him up to say how he was doing. A couple of weeks later, I heard from anything, and he said he signed up for a 3-day retreat for trauma release. He would have never, done that without opening up that what do you call it? That possibility that he needed. You know what I'm saying? You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So,
And that happened through the work with you.
right. I'm saying that if I can accomplish that,
So let's talk a little about your work, because I don't know if most of the audience will understand. So most people know you as an artist, but over the last few years, as you've, I guess, started working through whatever it was you were dealing with. I think you were going through a divorce, right?
yeah. So, yeah. After 30 years, of course, I'm not going to go into any details about that,
Right.
the anyone's been through divorce, and it was my second divorce, and I have 9 kids, 4 from my first marriage and 5 from my second, and the first marriage was 10, 11 years, and the second one was 30 years. So it's not like, it's very funny. I was thinking, I either woke up yesterday morning, and I just had this whole thing like I'm giving a microphone to many people, like, and there's half the people who are married were divorced. That's
Right.
the way it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big audience, and probably your audience is probably a bigger percentage because people listen or need healing and stuff. And I just married off my last child, and it was actually remarkable to see how my kids turned out, and with all these things, and it was whatever. It was just really very healing, a very beautiful wedding down here in Florida. Anyway, what I came to realize is that I said to myself, you can look at it like I was divorced. Like, people think of themselves as divorced, or you can think about it like, no, I had a marriage for 30 years. Like, when you see all the stuff that came out of it, and children, and not like, and even when doing it, everyone's working things out. It's still trying to work in a relationship, even if it's like ends up like in divorce. It's your life. It's not always bad anyway, like that. And it's like there's just,
Saying it's still a 30-year marriage.
it's a marriage. Like, I had a marriage, and so to me, when you see like beautiful children and they're emotionally, healthy and all this kind of stuff, and to me, it was a successful marriage. Do you hear what I'm saying?
100%. If a business survives 30 years,
What?
if a business
Right.
survived 30 years,
Right.
would say
So
it's a
it's like
successful
a mind. It's a positivity bias. Like, what are you really meditating on? And when you have that kind of gratefulness, so then you can go right to the that you're grateful to God. So because like, instead of like, why'd you do this to me, or why I went through this or that, then that whole stuff. You can even you grateful to your ex-spouse. You can become grateful. Just the gratitude, it sort of takes over. I just think it's, and a lot of times I go to these things, or when I went breathwork, you have spiritual experiences like you're talking, and I try to like find it in Torah or Hasidus or something. I try to find, maybe that's what it's talking about, and I always find it. Did you hear what I'm saying? Like, it's
maybe
always,
that's what what's talking about.
like a concept in Hasidus, or it's all there. We just don't. You don't experience it. You don't really understand what it's talking about. But I'm saying, I seem to always be able, all the things, gratitude, all these things, you can find it. We have it in our own backyard, is what I'm trying to point out.
Right. But all right, so I guess what you're saying with that is that it's all there, and therefore not having to look elsewhere.
No, I wasn't even.
Right,
I'm
not
just,
that,
I
but
was
it
just
happens to
making a
be there.
statement about. No, I don't know where you were going. You asked me about divorce. But
No,
actually,
actually,
I wanted to get that in before I forgot,
Right,
because
before I thought.
it was a real
We were actually
positive thought about the
about
whole
divorce.
experience, is what I'm saying. But the
Right.
pain,
That's like an expansive
the
thought.
pain is excruciating pain.
Right.
Anyone's been through divorce, the best divorce is excruciating.
But it's an expansive thought. It doesn't take away the pain.
What?
It's an expansive thought in the sense that it doesn't take away the pain of it, but it
Right. You're able
puts
to
things in
hold
context.
it.
Yes.
It's a balance.
There's
No,
a
but you
30-year
can-
marriage that then went
No,
through
and the
divorce.
pain can definitely get less. No, if actually there's a redemptive part of the pain too.
I'm not talking about the pain now. I'm talking about the painful part of the experience.
well, you know that when you're in the middle of it, it's just you have to draw on a much deeper place.
100%.
But you have a good line of see on the other side. You know, that's many times like that. When when you come to when you work through something, then you. But yeah, people. But that's it. That's what I'm saying. So it's like you have to be patient. You have to be there for a person. Be very compassionate. Someone coming to you and they're in the middle of stuff. Sometimes all you can do basically is just be there, and they should see, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Things will work out at some point, and it won't be like this, which is usually the way it is.
Yeah, where I was going was actually introducing your somatic art. So I was saying
okay.
everyone knows you as those who know you as an artist.
Right.
But over the last few years, you've developed some sort of
right. I mean, it's
method,
like sort of on the side. It's
somatic
not
art.
my day job, and
I
most things are
understand.
in the evening and when they happen and that kind of thing or whatever. But
So speak to that a little bit. We did a little bit before
right.
we started recording.
Right, and we didn't go that far. Like when you actually start making a piece of art, it's actually well, you experienced a little. Like, do you want to ask me a question about it, or you just want me to start?
I wanted to explain to the audience, because you were referencing it. I want to explain to the audience that kind of what it is and what you offer, not in all the detail, but just that there's a somatic art practice that you offer that has a therapeutic component to it or aspect to it.
Right.
So using art as a way to heal.
Right.
Yeah, what we did was nifty. I liked it. The music, the external expression of the internal world, right? Using the pencil and the paper to kind of put what we were feeling on the paper and then be able to look at it afterwards. I thought it was neat.
Right. Gosh. Well, yeah, I mean, basically from doing, what do you want to call it, inner work, you want to call it breath work, working out.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the last few years really trying to go within deeper, because we have our childhood traumas, but this is like this is trauma right now. Right? Then when you're going through these things and stuff like that, and there's a lot of soul searching and all this stuff just all over again, so to speak. And I realized, I don't know if somehow, because some of the techniques, some of these things is like where it's you have somatic healing done to you, and you find certain things in the body where you locate where the original traumas came from, inner child work, and it's this kind of thing. And I don't know, just at one point I started to realize that with doing certain things, physical withdrawing or certain things, that it's just so in line with where people are needing this somatic. Why do so many people need somatic healing today? Because the body keeps the score, and it really, you have to find it in order to just heal it. And I've seen amazing things with that done. We're just getting, what's the word? I guess you can call it trauma release or whatever it is. Like getting in, and then things, because people's lives sometimes, it's the way they think about things. It's the spin. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. I'm this. I'm that. All kinds of things that came from very early
programming.
And you've had people in your podcast who are psychologists who deal with this type of stuff. So I realized, like, with actually doing things with your hands, and like, you can actually access those places, and there's a reference for the person by doing something physical like that on the page, and they actually can feel certain things. Close the eyes with the music, certain things relaxing, and you actually can get. It helps like in meditation. You can like get in touch with the person, a place that's like your calm essence, so to speak. And so then your ability to deal with these paradoxes, these opposites, and everything, you can actually, you have some reference.
If someone listening is interested in working with you, how would they do that?
I think it's called Muchnik Arts, and my secretary will take down if we can work something out. I do things, I'm not yet. When I say yet, I'm still an artist and I do my art, and it's like I don't travel much to do these things. I do most of them in New York here and there, and but I'm open to things, especially whatever. Or I can be a guest at maybe a healing retreat or something like that, like I did with you. It could be something for a few hours workshop in the middle of a weekend, and there's lots of those going on, and I'd be open to that for sure.
Right. It's neat.
It's because it's just a different way of accessing.
100%. Yeah,
And people are different, and some people, they really, they really are affected by it very deeply.
no, I can imagine. I can see how
That can happen.
it can happen. Yeah, we only did it probably for about 15 minutes,
Right.
but I saw how it can happen. One of the more interesting parts was, when you first started. I don't want to give away too much of what you do, but when you first started it, and it was just calm and getting to that space, and then you interrupted with things that were a little bit more harsh. So seeing the very stark difference between the two states, meaning typically if I'm doing a meditation, so you go into a meditative state and then you'll slowly come out of it, and then slowly the world will come at you. But in this, it was
Right, like you have
right.
to leave the place and go.
Correct. And
Go
then
to your
slowly you'll
job,
start
right, yeah.
slowly you'll
Right.
start getting, you almost won't even notice the difference between you in a tense state and
Right.
you in the calm meditative state.
Right.
And over here you created it within seconds, and it was like, wow, that's
Powerful.
what it feels like. That's what
Right.
it feels like, that totally relaxed state that I
Right,
can
you're
be
actually feeling the
Tension.
the process that you feel in life in this. You're feeling it actually in an exercise. I
Correct.
guess you want to call it.
in. Right. It kind
I
of
don't
puts
like
it under a
using that word. I don't
microscope.
know what else to say.
Yeah, it puts it under a microscope because typically it sneaks up on you. And so you can start the day in a beautiful meditative state, and by the time evening comes around, you're exhausted. But there wasn't a moment when
Right.
it came rushing in.
Right.
In your workshop, that happens, right? There's a moment where it comes rushing
Right.
in, and you can
Right.
see it. It's like, hey, I was in this meditative state, and now there's a lot of tension in my body from some of the
I have
things
a
you
whole
did.
bunch of things that I do. It's actually, and I've heard that word, because when someone feels it, like they'll say something like, "This is profound." Like it can be a profound moment just wow. Yeah, and then there's also things I do. Someone comes to me and I just do like I said, I'm not a licensed somatic. I'm not. I got my whole life. I never got licensed in anything. I quit.
By the way, as much as you dislike religion, I dislike this idea of only licensed healers being out doing
That's
anything.
half the
Meaning we're
reason.
all medicine. We're all medicine. We're all-
Right.
there's license for a specific thing. Okay, so if someone learned EMDR therapy, then congratulations, you have a certification for that. If someone learned cognitive behavior therapy, so they can put.
I totally.
But we're all
get it.
healers.
Like I tell people, I say like, I did graduate high school. I got a diploma, but I quit art school to go to yeshiva. I never stayed long enough to become a rabbi. So I left there. You know what I mean? And all these things, and I do all this stuff. I never. I think it's working for me. So but yeah, it's life experiences, whatever. So I do some one-on-one where I literally get into a meditative state, and I have them on the carpet and stuff like that, and it's very interesting being like so versed in color and shadow and all these kind of things, so you can utilize that. And when there's a visual or something, or you're feeling something, like I can have people go into, like, if they're like in pain, whether it's emotional, something they can like locate it and put a color to it. Then each person's so different. I love it. It's when all this kind of healing work, it's organic. It's beautiful. You have to be just really present, and you just get the clues from the person, because it's what's in them. It comes out right according to what is. So, for instance, I've had a few times someone came. And suddenly they're coming. I'm coming. They're like, I'm a pain healer. They're not like that. They're coming. They just mention that they have this real pain. Something is. So when I get them very, very relaxed and all this kind of stuff, and I have music to help them with that put a color to it, and 95% of the times they can put a color to it.
They could put a color.
Yes, like I just had a color comes to them where they can put a color to it. So as an artist, I would know this, and many people know it. But now I learned taking this, and I was applying it, and I'll explain that if you have the color wheel is, the rainbow colors. That's the
Roy G. Biv.
There's an order to and in Kabbalah it's the spheros, and all these things, right?
Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Good. And all the colors are included in white. Colors are light. White is not the absence of color. It's actually the exact opposite. White light is actually the inclusion of all colors. And when you refract it like a prism or the rainbow, when there's a mist, then it refracts and then the colors come out. So the colors are like in a lower level than the white light. And this is all explained. All kinds of things in Kabbalah, Hasidus. I mean, it's like white and everything's in Kes. It's fascinating, right? And these can be applied to all kinds of things. Anyway, so if you take the end of the rainbow and you put it, if you had the strip and you take the one side and put it up to the other side, that's called the color wheel. And whenever you look up, and you can look up Google, the color wheel.
Okay.
It's the rainbow going around and coming back to the full circle.
So the rainbow not being a half.
Coming back full circle, right?
Okay.
So it's called by art, whatever, complementary colors means if whatever's on the opposite side of the color wheel, so there's like blue would be orange, red would be green, yellow would be purple, okay? If let's say you're painting a picture and your yellow is too bright, the way to dull it is you put like a light wash of purple on it, or you put purple dots or purple anything around it, and the yellow dulls. It's not as bright looking to the eye, right? So if I would put on this wall, like I put the same yellow pieces of paper on this side and one on that side, but on that side I would surround it with some purple, you would swear to me that this is like 10 times brighter than that yellow.
Oh,
Okay? So I do a lot of meditation about all this stuff in the morning.
You do a lot of what?
Meditation. I do breath work in the morning, like for about 45 minutes, my own relaxing circular breathing, and I meditate. It's wonderful. And I think, sometimes in the middle of the night, I can't sleep. I wake up and I start ideas for a workshop or these meditations. This is what I'm talking about. There's no end to this. Anyway, so I realized that if that's the case, and if you can put a color to your pain, then if you meditate on the opposite color, it would ease the pain, right?
I'd have to try it.
No, I've done it with people.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Not most people are not having, but like I've had people come in. Now it doesn't mean it goes away forever. It's like anything. It's just like any one of these things you're talking about when you have an experience and something very intense. So then you have to integrate it and you have to train or whatever. I'm convinced I'll have someone will come and he puts a color, like I had one guy come and put a dark green, color to his, and he was in such pain that unfortunately he had real stomach issues, and it was all from stress. I know the guy person, and he ended up in the hospital and had an operation. Never, but when he came to me, so he's doing this, and I said, just think. And it was a personal thing, so I'm not going to go into it. But I said, think of anything with light green, and there was something in his life that was light green that was very healing for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had him picture it, and I had him surrounding that, how I
What was the color of the pain?
Dark green.
Okay, so you had him do.
I'm sorry. I said light green, light pink. Red and green are opposites. So dark green, the opposite would be light pink, light red, or light pinkish, right? So and he found something that was very healing. A few things, and he was like. And I just said, like, surround the red with that. Surround the air. And his pain went away. His pain, in this case, his pain completely went away. I've done this a few different times with some people if that was going on. The application of, like, visual somatic healing through visual colors, I think, just untapped. Like, I feel like I should start a whole.
It sounds really interesting.
Research.
It sounds really interesting.
And And then I would imagine if it, and I did this with one of my granddaughters, but they're young. She was afraid of the dogs or something because her sister loves watching the dogs. So they dog watch. Or the sister, like, her mom goes away to for a weekend. She babysits the dog, but the other sister's like freaked out by animals. So I had to put a collar, and I told her also the same thing, just like meditate. When you see it, just meditate with this bird's color. But I'm just saying, like, you can do all kinds of things like that alone. Then I have this thing with this very powerful. One of the things in the somatic thing, which I don't want to give it away, but no one's going to remember it from today to tomorrow that much because they're not experiencing it. But where you actually, I have a ball of clay and it's covered, and you think about what something that's really, really bothering you, that's like that you're really stuck with. And again, it can be from A to Z, and everyone finds something. It's not a problem. It's the whole atmosphere. And then, there's this whole thing about unraveling it and cutting off the husk, and that's really not. It's not like this thing, which is like a rock solid thing. If you start needing it or something, you actually can realize that this, and you experience inside this feeling of that, it's not, and you're actually dealing with that particular thing, that it's not as, right? And then I go to this whole thing where that actually ends up becoming this piece of art that you make.
From the clay.
Yeah, like and I've done these other things.
I'm intrigued, by the way. I would sign up for sure.
What?
I'm intrigued. I would sign up.
Yeah, your mother said the same thing.
Did she?
No, I was just saying I do women's workshops. And I said, she says, "Oh, I want to go." Anyhow,
did she? Because we had some guy in a podcast that said that the parents can heal things that can affect the kids.
They can heal things and
it can affect their kids.
Oh, for sure. Oh, it's not a question about it.
Maybe,
so you can't wait till I invite your mother now?
Yeah, maybe it'll save me some time.
I love it.
I've been working through a few issues that are stuck. I believe
it's true. It's another thing, which, like, I had a couple, and I happened to bump into both of them. Just, we talk, and they're spiritual type people, and I mentioned that, I do these things, and I get a call from them. Can they come as a couple to my? Can you do us as a couple? I said, look. I've been divorced twice. I'm not going to be doing couple type therapy with this stuff. It's just like I don't feel like that's not my, forte. So I said, if you want to come as a couple, but I'm just doing this stuff, but just you're both coming, but we're doing the individual things that I normally do, fine, right? So they come, and I charge a decent amount of money for it. It was a couple, and it's like whatever. And they come, and I had this thing where, like, I can't explain exactly, but they made this whole background with the clay and stuff, and then like abstract or whatever, and each one took the colors that they liked. So each one's really, it's their colors. So when someone picks a color, it's also something from inside, and So I said, now after they had got to that point, I said, now cut. I gave them a thing. They cut it in half. Cut your, soft clay. I said, now each one, pick a half and give it to your spouse, right? So she gives him, and he gives him, and he starts, you gave me the half that you didn't like. And she got all, whatever, and bent out of shape because he said that, because she actually gave him the half that she really liked the best. He says, I'm only kidding. She says, no, you're right. Like, they started this whole fight over it. This is like right at the beginning of this thing, right? And I'm not going to do couple anything, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, oh, good Lord. Like, forget it. This is just, above my pay grade, and I don't want to go here. But I thought, but they pay me all this money. And I just said, you know what, Michoel, just go with it, right? So then I told them, look, basically now, you had this thing that you made, and now you cut it, and it's like you're bringing the other person's color. It's not what you would. It's in a way jarring. It's not what you expected. It's not what you. I said, now your challenge is to take both of these pieces, each of you, and separately, and make something, make a piece of art out of it, anything, any creation you can come by blending both of your colors into this thing. I can't tell you what gorgeous things they came up with. It was abstract, but it was balanced, beautiful, and they gifted each other with it. It was just real. Anyway, after that session, so they called me. They said, "Look, they didn't know this was going to be so cool. And it really helped them. Go, can we come like 8 times, but just charge us, like much less because we're telling you like this. We know that you don't do couples. You can experiment on us, anything you want, right? So like, and that's what happened. They come to me like 10 times. They're still coming. They love it. It's like a night out. And there's always something cool going on. And I keep adding all these different things to my repertoire. And it's really, really fascinating. There's something about this, taking something which is from inside and just,
It sounds like a really fun date night.
What?
Much more fun than going to a restaurant.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's always meaningful. Also, when you do groups, I've done women's groups, I've done men's groups, I've done Bali Shub and Yeshiva. Like when I was in Tzfas, I come to Tzfas to finish this mural, right? But I can't control myself. I'm running around like calling all these places. Do you want to do a workshop? And I had a granddaughter in there. She set up in the Chitruk Yeshiva. I mean, the seminary, and this is like the creme of the creme. The girls who learn and I have a name above it, so they actually left me alone with them. They didn't know I was going to do any of this stuff anyway. And I did Rotzoi V'Shuv with breathwork and all kinds of stuff. And they made these things out of it was really amazing. And some other things. It was fun. It was deep. And what happens in almost all the time, actually I could say all the time, it brings the people get closer together. By the time they leave this workshop, it's very connecting.
Yeah,
because you're connecting.
Yeah. My wife and I did something once, but it wasn't a therapeutic workshop or anything. It was just some place you go and paint. And we worked on something together. She's a lot better at it than I am.
Right.
We worked on something together, and they had different themes and thoughts, and it definitely prompted conversations, meaning there was something, we put a road with trees and something at the end, and each thing represented something else, and it facilitated a type of conversation between us that many other things wouldn't. There's a possibility that once we air this, a lot of people call you about it. It's possible.
Oh, no, I know that. But I can
You're gonna have to get
busy.
a.
I have time, but I don't have time. I know my schedule.
I'll get you a page on OK Clarity. I don't know if you know what OK Clarity is.
No, I realized this. I did. We'll see where it goes from here. I was aware of that.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. It's not something I can predict or not, but I know even Mayor Kalmason.
I'm not afraid.
Yeah, he was busy before breathwork, but I know, he has told me that since the podcast here, a lot of people have reached out to him for one-on-one, for virtual, for other kinds of work, and then people bring up ideas. Well, someone sees you and says, "Hey, maybe you can do this for me," based on what.
Once they hear Eli Nash say, "Oh yeah, Mayor, like I like what you did with me," or they say, "Yeah," all of a sudden becomes really kosher for a lot of people. I have to tell you.
Maybe not a lot of people. Maybe the people who listen to this.
What?
Maybe the people who listen to this.
What?
I said maybe the people who listen to this, which is why
a lot of people listen to this. Yeah. Anyway, so I have a little bit of a challenge these days because in some funny way, I'm sometimes more excited about that than like doing my paintings.
Actually, I was going to ask
it's actually a bit of a challenge.
I was going to ask you that question about, I was thinking about that earlier in the conversation, just being an artist and then going into that as a career, and how money sometimes sucks out the spice of life. And how has that been to manage the creativity with the profession, career, money aspect of it?
I have a big challenge with that now because I do a lot of, not my own art, but I do a lot of stuff for Chabad houses, these honor walls and all this with my art, but it's not creative for me, or it's repetitious. I'm in the midst of a whole thing. All this work I've been doing and everything, there's a lot. Don't think I don't have a lot of conflicts.
I can see.
What?
I can see as soon as I brought it up. The whole.
Yeah, you saw my
yeah,
body
the whole mood
language.
change. Yeah.
It was-
I thought you'd share something with me. Like if I
what-
turn this
no,
into
I'll
a
share
business.
whatever you want.
No, meaning I thought you'd share something that can help me out myself. Like this is not a business. Right?
Maybe you
This
can help
podcast.
me
On this one. But you somehow managed to produce art.
No, okay, with that, because it's my, what do you call it? It's my love, it's my passion, art. For many years, I traveled, and it was mostly, let's say, 90% Chabad houses. There were other places I did, exhibitions, but and it was really a shlichus. It was really like it was a mission for me. It wasn't just about selling the artwork at all. It wasn't,
Right, it was out of the message.
It really wasn't the main thing. It was, and I got a lot of input from the Rebbe, so I felt very good about that.
Growing up, we had a lot of your art in my parents' house.
So yeah, I know that.
It was Rebbe
I know
pictures
that.
and your art, pretty much.
No, I know that they bought things, or they were gifted things as a presentation piece that happened to. But in any which case, wait, where were we? I got lost with that.
You're talking about the work for the Chabad house, 90%.
Oh no, so I went. So I had this slideshow, which was like 20 minutes, half an hour, where I took from different paintings I had, starting with the birth of a child. It all had to do with Jewish life, you know, and then I went through different things, bar mitzvah, holidays, spiritual stuff, and then there was Mashiach ideas, whatever, and different paintings that had to do with it. And a lot of it was like vintage. And as time went on, I added new styles, whatever it was, but it was fascinating. And I would show that before the exhibition sale and stuff happened. Like it was all set up, the lights went out, and I would show that. And it blew me away, myself, how attentive people were listening to it, and how much Hasidic ideas and things, because most of them were based on some teaching. So when you get a rabbi up there, unless he has to be really, really charismatic for people to listen to what he's saying, and it usually has to make one good point, and if he goes off too much, people's eyes start going, or they fall asleep or whatever like that. Here, in the course of this slide presentation, because they're looking at something visual, they really were able to get all this kind of stuff and have a good feeling about this particular. It was really amazing. I have to be really honest with you. I guess just life, and it was hard for me to travel around. And when I was going through a divorce or something, just things happened that I got older. It was more risky for financial reasons, other things. And then I started getting more, commissions. And at one point I just sort of settled down in my studio, and I didn't do, but I still feel bad about it in a way, it was because it was so amazing, or that aspect of it. And sometimes you'd sell, and sometimes you didn't sell so much, but that was, I actually had a haror, or the Rebbe gave me actually advice about that. Oh, talk about anxiety?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So the first time I did one of these traveling exhibitions, I didn't even have that much artwork. I didn't have made lithographs yet. There were some prints, things like that. And I made, at that time, most Chabad houses were in California. This was early 80s, maybe 81. So I scheduled 8 exhibitions, sort of almost one night after another. And they were always looking to do some kind of something, and this was very unique, and da-da-da. By the third exhibition, I sold out. I just wasn't calculating. I sold out almost everything. I was going to sell out, but people put out invitations and expected me, and they're having this whole thing. I got so stressed. It was really, the anxiety was through the roof. I was totally, when I came back from the trip, I was sick from it. It was that kind of thing. So I ended up selling it and asking if I could return it after the week so I could have the exhibition, and then people
Right,
could
that makes
order
sense.
things or whatever it was. Yeah, except that I had to go back to each of those cities and return artwork to all these people who bought. I
Right.
mean, whatever. Anyway, I learned a lot of lessons. But I came back, I asked her, what can I do? No, I said, actually, it looks like I can make parnasa from this. You know, I'm selling. People are buying my artwork, and I'm doing these exhibitions. I said, but I'm so anxious. I came back sick. Like, how can I? So, what should I do? What should I meditate on? So I said I should put out a siddur, prayer book, Psalms, Tillim, and a Chumash, the books of Moses, and then a charity box, it's a tzedakah box, and the side of each exhibition. That's what I should do, and also that I should give 18 times 18 cents. 18 is high, the lifetime's life, whatever. Before each exhibition comes out to $3.54. And what I should meditate on. This, I for sure, if the Rebbe answered me, he was going to give me some kind of book to, like learn this, learn that. The Rebbe just said, meditate on the hashgacha pratis, which means meditate on the divine providence. And trust me, so when things were happening, which you weren't expecting, which happened all the time, you know what I'm saying? Or things were, let's say, I had my artwork not show up at an exhibition, which was starting in 3 hours after I got there, and they put it on a different plane because it was too small, and they put it on a plane that went to a different city. I've had things happen, Or when I travel the world, customs, they won't let me through. There's just stuff. Like, I have stories. I could write a book about it. But having that, like, meditate, like there's a reason for things, and some things you see later, and some things really helped. And then I realized also people would come see Judaism in a picture, but when you see it actually on the table, it never said to the side, but you see it's in life. It's a real thing. It was also like, I like that. Those different things. And also about giving tzedakah, you don't wait till you sell, and that's when you give your 10%. Like start giving beforehand. Have petachon you're going to sell. You don't have to get all worried about that. Trust me. I'm by nature anxious, and I've had plenty of anxiety since then. But when I do these things, I remember, put the thing there or give the tzedakah.
It's helped.
The bracha comes, and I'm able to function more calm. So, anybody listening can take that kind of thing. I think meditating on all these things can be helpful for anxiety.
Yeah, I've done that a lot without titling that, like meditating on the divine providence of things. But I do it often. It's just seeing the hand and connection. And I recommend it as well. Not using those words.
It's major.
I connected it more to something in the 12 steps, but it was nice to hear a different reference for that, a Rebbe reference for that.
Right.
What do you think of the fact that, at some point in time, your art's probably going to be worth 50 or 100 times more than it is today?
You mean like after 120, you mean?
Yeah.
Good. So my kids will benefit, hopefully, if they still have the paintings. No, there was one artist in Crown Heights. So
it'll probably happen, right?
What?
It'll probably happen. It's kind of the...
well, most people
that's what
don't last after 120.
No, I don't mean that. I mean that the art will be worth...
Yeah. It's already happening to some extent, but it's like things that I sold, so they're selling to somebody else or something like that. So there's a resale value, I guess, that people want.
Right.
Things. Vintage,
This is why I think
stuff.
NFT art was interesting for artists getting into NFTs, not necessarily the NFT creation of it, meaning the fact that it's on a virtual world, but that the creator could be attached to it for the duration of this item's life. So, for example, if there was I
haven't heard much about that lately. It still was popular. It got real popular for a while. But no one took my stuff to do it, and it was, I don't know, whatever.
Well, it got real popular. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do it. It got real popular. It became a fad, meaning outside of the immediate circle of people who use it. But yeah, there's definitely use cases for it. And the blockchain has a lot of very interesting use cases. And if you talk about the zeitgeist in the world where we're recognizing the risks of giving too much power to too few people, I think blockchain has a lot of potential. But the idea from the art perspective is that every single time, let's say this was the piece of art, this glass, and in order to sell it to you, you would want, hey, give me that virtual token that was attached to it.
Right.
So that way I know it's real and I can
Right.
verify the authenticity and kind of the chain throughout. It would be some sort of ledger that exists. And then me as the artist would say, okay, I'm fine. I'm creating this. Every single time this trades hands, give me back 10%.
Right.
And that theoretically in that economic environment, that would be possible. So, and it's, I think, what attracted a lot of artists to that space.
I'm just like so like not into economic things. Like it's like and all this stuff is so funny. I'm really trying to pay attention. Like, but I sort of check out. Like, you know, like it's not my thing. You know, my kids want to do it, fine, because
In short, imagine there was a way that
What?
imagine there was a way that every single time your art sold, even into
Yes.
50 or 100 years from now,
I think it should be that
you
way.
were a
I
trust
think
in
it
your
should be
name.
that way for artists.
Right.
There was something that sold in Sotheby's of a Hasidic artist in the community, and it was like went for like $480,000. You know, when he was alive, you know, he was just trying to, you know, put challah on the table.
I know,
right?
that's exactly
and,
what I'm saying.
and also like there's like hardly, I don't think there's really any paintings left. He had to sell all them to live in his apartment in Crown Heights, you know. So the kids don't benefit anything from it at all financially. It's sad. And I wonder how they feel to see that done. It makes, I'm sure, well, to see my father's thing selling for that much money that's valued that way.
Right, that part of it's
they
nice.
have no,
but-
they don't have any merchandise. So it's funny because that's how I feel. God should give me strength. I feel like right now I really want to like produce some pieces and just, you know,
Store it.
yeah, like Yerusha.
Okay, we'll talk about it offline.
What?
We'll talk about it offline.
But
they
no,
heard
and
it
it's
here
also
first.
all the stuff that I've been going through. I've been so involved with like this stuff. And whatever. And now I feel like I'm out of my last kid and you know, whatever. It's like all the other stuff's behind. I also have this amazing drive to just create like amazing pieces of art, like a whole new.
Well, it's neat to see. It's neat to see like the youthful. I don't
Yeah.
call you older, but the youthful excitement.
Yeah.
Is it because you're divorced, or is it possible to still have this?
No. Don't ask me that. Well, there's a certain, I guess, in that way, there's a certain freedom, but you know, maybe I have a little more. Yeah. There's certain responsibilities. Like I said, I just married off the last kid. You know, whatever. I can sort of focus on those things.
That's neat.
I mean a lot to me, and yeah.
So let me ask you this as a final question. I know you were excited to come on this podcast, which is kind of humbling. It's cool in some way. Do you feel like you got what you came for?
Yes, actually, mostly in the last third where we started talking about my workshops and that stuff, because that's right now that's a huge passion by me, and I see an amazing potential in it. The other things, I've been on other things, and I talk about, you know, my stories, you know, that kind of thing. So, but that's where we were going.
Yeah, I can say I want to do it as a date night. So I'm spending a lot of time in New York for the summer.
Right.
So I want to do it as a date night. I would love to do it as a date night.
Oh, were you with your wife, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Come to
think
my
that would be
studio.
awesome. I think a lot of people listening will be inspired to reach out.
Right,
based
and
on
I can do groups. If someone's like you can bring 5 couples, 10 couples. I have certain limits of how much I can do in my studio. It's just a regular messy artist studio, but I have, you know, I clear up I have 3, 4 big work tables, and we clear them off, put stools,
Sounds awesome.
and just right in with the artist himself, and it's
Right.
sort of I don't like real big groups because I like to know everybody's name and get a little bit personal with it.
No, it sounds great.
What's interesting about it actually is that people don't have to be so vulnerable about letting out and even talk about so much what it's bringing up for them. They can apply what they're doing right there in their whole process of things, and just,
Right.
you know.
One of the things I like about the somatic work in general, whether it's breath work or other kinds of therapy, is that the answers kind of come from within, and the experience one has, not everyone Not everyone knows. It doesn't have to. They can choose to share what they want.
Right, exactly.
I can have a very intense breathwork ceremony and then just say afterwards, thank you so much. I feel very relieved,
Right.
and I released a lot. And none of
Right. And
know,
some people really want to share.
I can save the rest of it for a
Right.
podcast. The details.
Like during the workshop,
okay.
I
Sure.
basically asked, does anybody want to share? We call it like a check-in with what you experienced. Some people do, some people don't.
Right. Awesome. So thank you so much. I really
No,
appreciate
thank you
you
for having me. It's very
coming out.
special.
And
And
God willing, I'll have the opportunity with my wife to do the workshop with you, or also just come alone. And
you don't have to workshop. If I'm down here again, I can do it anywhere.
yeah,
No,
like I said, we're
just have to
spending a
bring
lot of
the
time.
I just have to bring the stuff.
Yeah, we're spending a lot of time in New York for the summer, so
Okay, cool.
my family's up there now. So
Nice.
yeah,
I can
so we'll
see
figure
why
it
they're
out.
up. It's so hot down here.
It's a sauna down here.
What?
It's a sauna down here.
Ridiculous.
Well, inside here, the studio is beautiful. So
Yeah, no.
thank you for
as long as you're inside, it's
for
fine.
joining us. And if you're inspired, we got a nice bath out back.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
It's
Okay,
a fun
Ellie.
thing to do.
Well,
Thank you so much.
thanks again.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.